Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Kativ Autodesk Virtual Academy. I'm Nigel Umbayek, your host for today, I guess, in the studio here at Kativ in Brea, and I'm also joined by Jorge Fernandez. How's it going, Jorge?
Good. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon.
Yeah, depending on where you are. It could be good evening too, Jorge. We do have some international viewers on here. Definitely thank you all for being here and joining us today. So today, kind of take two, we're going over some Autodesk Vault features, right? We're working with items and bill of materials. We know this is really important for a lot of people in their workflow. If you don't know why this is so important for some people, or maybe yourself, you'll learn that today during our webcast. So I guess Jorge is going to be able to explain that, but just the gist of things, if you ever want to export your bill of materials, say to things like ERP, CRM systems, purchasing systems in general, this is something you're definitely going to want to stick around for. So definitely be ready to sit here for about 30-35 minutes or so, and then we're going to jump straight into Q&A. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Jorge, you have anything else to add?
No, I guess let's just go ahead and get started, man.
All right, cool. Go ahead and take it away.
Perfect. All right, so welcome, everybody. Like Nigel said, we'll be going over items inside of Vault, and to be more specific, Vault Professional. I know that's one of the key things we always get asked when we're doing a Vault session, right? This is dedicated to Vault Professional and working with bill of materials and what we call items. So today, what we'll be going over is, first of all, what are items? What does it really mean to us? And what does that mean to the world around us? And finally, once we uncover that, we'll start taking a look at how Vault works with it and some of the key things that it'll help you do and how to do them. So we'll start off first by going through some of those examples and kind of explaining it before we actually go and show you it. So let's go ahead and jump right in with what are items. So the way I like to think of an item is all the information you need to get this manufactured. So and you see here, even in my in our definition, it's a container of information, right? So what this means is, hey, are there any spec sheets with this? Is there any assembly documentation? Is there drawings? Is there DXS maybe for flat patterns and things of that nature? Being able to store it all in one location so that when you search for it and you bring it up, you get everything in one central place. It could also mean things that aren't necessarily CAD files. I talk about spec sheets like a PDF, an Excel sheet. It could also be paint, lubricants, anything that doesn't have a CAD file associated. So we'll be going over these things, of course. And really what it comes down to is being able to have all this information so that you have a true full bill of materials. Again, everything you need to get this product out the door, basically. And at that point, then we start talking about, well, really we manage that in our ERP system or MRP system or CRM even. This is all event resource planning, for example, a material resource planning, to be able to make sure that these items get purchased, the stock pieces get purchased as well. And sometimes some people start an ERP first, sometimes they start in Vault Pro first, but I'm here to tell you that we can tie the two together. So what we're going to talk about today is really the out-of-the-box functionality, if you will, with some configuration in a lot of cases, of course. But as far as being able to work with an ERP system, we're going to be talking about exporting this information manually. But a big step forward, right? Or before we'd have to, if anything, maybe an Inventor export a bill of materials or a sheet or a table or something like that. So we'll be going over a few things. So I just have a few quick slides just to do a quick, what we're going to see. And some of the things we're going to jump into is how do we create these items? There's going to be cases where you don't have an item already, so we can create it from scratch. Think again like lubricants, grease, standard things that you might not necessarily even create a CAD model for. You can also create these items first before you create the CAD model, by the way. Not sure if a lot of you who have Vault Pro already know about that, actually. And so what will happen is as we create the CAD files and we create items out of them, they automatically grab all the information from it. So the property, the description, the part number, stock number, all of that gets grabbed and it puts it into Vault for you to be able to view it inside of there and not have to just rely on looking at a drawing and opening that up. Thus, why Vault Pro is so much better for a larger organization, not just the CAD user anymore, right? Now we can have more people be a part of this entire process. And then as we go and we start making modification to our models, we can make updates to them as well. Maybe the description changes, maybe we remove some parts, add some parts. We're able to update these as well so the bill of materials is correct as well, and we can release these files and again get them out to ERP is what it really comes down to, or to your CRM system or someplace where purchasing can get to this information. So it'll create a bill of materials based off of those files. It can be any one single file. It can be an entire assembly, and it'll grab all that for you. You know, there's a misconception out there sometimes where, well, the drawing has my parts list. You're right, it does. But it's really all the drawing is doing is just reporting to you what the assembly has inside of it. And so the assembly really becomes what I'll call the master file, and that's what holds all the information, and that's what gets pushed to the items. And I wanted to explain all this. You'll see this, of course, as we move forward through this demonstration. But I just wanted to make sure everyone understands that all this information is coming really from the parts and the assemblies themselves. And once we get into the actual bill of materials inside of Vault, one of the things we'll go over is how we can add more to it. You know, a lot of times we might not have everything modeled, or we might have not thought of everything up front. In some cases, maybe it's someone after we've actually designed it that needs to add maybe a repair kit or something like that, and you already have it in stock. You already have a part number for it. You don't have to model it, so we can always add existing items into here as well. We'll make sure to show you that. And just like in Vault, with everything else, we have the ability to customize our views and the information we're seeing, right? So do you want to see the revision? Do you want to see the quantity? Do you want to see what state it's in? We're able to customize all those, and we'll show you that too. And here's a really big one, I think, is being able to compare BOMs. You know, how many of us have been in that situation where we're working on a different revision now, but we don't necessarily know what the difference is between the last one and the one we're working on right now. So we have the ability to compare different revisions as well as different assemblies, by the way. Maybe you did a copy design and you can't quite remember what happened last, or maybe somebody else was working on it and you want to see what is the major differences between these two assemblies. What components were added, what components were removed perhaps. So we'll show you some of that also. And lastly, when it comes to working with this, again, the ultimate goal is that someone else now can view this information. We can now export this information. And most of all, that it's released information, that we're able to do this when it's actually time to, and we don't pull the trigger, so to speak, too soon, right? And we're able to get the right information at the right time, be able to get this information across to something like an ERP system. So without further ado, I just wanted to give that quick introduction. We're going to talk through all these things right now, of course, and show it to you. So let's go ahead and go to our Vault. So what I'm going to do here is I'll just do a quick search. Of course, I could have just added it to my shortcuts. Sometimes I just like to highlight some of the tools we're using inside of here. But we have this assembly here. And inside this assembly, we get to see the history of it, how many versions we have of it, and what files it uses. I'm going to go through the example of first showing you what we do with a single part. Let's say this is a long lead item, for example, and you want to be able to release this and export it right away. We can surely do that. I just want you to take note. I'm going to go over to my right-hand side here on my properties grid, and this is all the I properties of the file. So I'm not sure how many of you are already very familiar with Inventor or not, but in Inventor we have I properties that have like description, cost, manufacturer, things like that. We can have custom properties as well. And here it's showing me basically all the things that are filled out. So we'll simply right-click on this file, and we're able to say assign an item. So since it doesn't have an item to it already, it's not updating it, it's actually creating it from scratch. And the way I have it built right now is that it's automatically going to, this one's going to take in the actual value of that part as well. So it just gave it that number. But we can have this either be a mapped value or it could be a sequential number, which you'll see in just a moment as well. As we're going through this, you get to see a quick preview and some of the very specific values that we want to see. So that's why you're seeing title, you're seeing description. Those are pretty common to everybody. But we can also have multiple properties. On the right-hand side over here, for example, we can add more properties if we wanted to and map those so that we see very specific things. I've seen things, for example, where we've had customers who are working with SAP. Maybe there's an SAP value specifically named that in here. So some of our customers might have something like that. And also, you're seeing here a little link, a primary associated file. And what this is letting us know that, hey, this is the primary link. I might have other files inside of here as well, but this is the main file that this was made or based off of. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. And we'll exit out for a moment. Now that we looked at how do we do this for one single part, let's take a look at how we do that for an assembly. So to this assembly we have here, I'm going to right click it and same as I did for the part, assign an item. What this is going to do now is it's going to capture what parts have not been assigned an item already. So if we go to the bill of materials, for example, here, we see a long list of all these items, and then there's a column here called vault status. And this lets me know that it's actually creating all these items. However, this one's blank, and that's because that's the one we created ourselves manually, the 003 part. So this is a nice, quick way to be able to identify, well, what did I do manually before I move on, that is, right? So we can do that here. All right, I'm going to do a quick save to this so that it generates all these items. And now you see it's cleared because it's now created and saved all those items for me in my vault. Now what I'm going to do is, remember I talked about, hey, we want all the information we need to be able to manufacture this part. That might include a spec sheet. So much like we would attach something to an email, we can attach something to this item as well. If we come in here, we can hit the attach button and browse for the information we need. I'm going to go to the Allen Bradley spec sheet here that I want to add to this assembly. When I do so, I can, if there's multiple versions of it, I can pick which specific version I need for it in case maybe we're kind of backtracking or there's newer versions and we want to make sure we have the right one, we can do so. And we can also pin this. Pinning it means that it's not attaching itself just to the file, but to the item itself. Let me rephrase that one more time. There's a regular attach button that we're used to using from Vault Basic even, where we can attach things to a file, and it says we're used, but now it's actually, we want it to be with the item, so we'll go ahead and pin this, and we'll see the result of that in just a moment. All right, we'll save this before we move forward. And now you'll notice if I go to the General tab, sure enough, that PDF is pinned right here. So if anybody goes to this item, they're going to see these two things, the assembly and that PDF. So that's great. That's part of what we need. But what if we now need to go and make some changes inside of CAD? Not a problem at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Inventor and use my Open from Vault button. And I'll just do a quick search. I could have done shortcut again, but I don't know how many of you are necessarily aware that you can actually search right inside of here when you do an Open from Vault inside of Inventor. It's actually a pretty, it's a standard practice and workflow recommendation from Autodesk to use Open from Vault, by the way. So we'll go ahead and open up this assembly and check it out. And we're just making some changes. We'll go ahead and update all the properties as well. Not that it's necessarily necessary right now, but whenever we can, I'd like to run that definitely. So we're going to make a few quick changes to this. These changes could be anything from, hey, you know what? I need to delete this component and make sure that my bill of materials doesn't show it anymore. In this case, I need to do one more checkout of another file, and that's okay. We've deleted that component. But maybe we have to make other changes. You know, let's make a change to the description, for example. So we'll go to the iProperties and we'll go to Project and change that description right there. It's you know, it's not a bad description by any means, but I'm gonna change it to assembly clamp, and I'll just abbreviate hydraulics here. We'll go ahead and save that. And we'll do one more thing. If you remember, we don't have a drawing, so we'll go ahead and create a quick drawing here and just put in some base views. We won't make this an Inventor demo necessarily. And just clean this up real quick. Great. All right. Of course, there's much more we could do. We would normally want to put a bill of parts list here, perhaps, and dimensions, of course. But for now, to show you more about items, let's go ahead and get this saved and check it in. I always like to add my comments in here. Perfect. Now we're going to go back over to Vault. All right. On screen, actually. I'm going to go to this Vault here. And we'll also bring this one up. Here we go. So if we go back to this assembly, you notice I can right-click here and I can go to that item. That's one quick way to do it. Also, down at the bottom left-hand corner, we have the item master where we can see every single item and we can search for it as well. I personally like to use these shortcuts of just right-clicking and being able to go to it. If I do that, though, you'll notice the description is still the same. The drawing is not inside of here. How do we fix that? Well, it's not necessarily a fix. It's actually a workflow. You got to make sure you update it. So when you right-click this item, you can just simply click the Update button. And it's going through, checking everything. And sure enough, my description's there. And it automatically grabbed the drawing. Notice, by the way, that the primary associated file is still the assembly. Again, that's where it's grabbing the information. The PDF, the drawing, those are just bystanders, if you will, other ways to portray the information that you need, right? So now we're able to very quickly update that item and have the latest and greatest inside of here. Now what I'm going to do is let's take a look at the bill of materials and make some changes to this. The first thing I can think of right now is, well, what if we needed to add more? We talked about being able to add from existing items that we already have in here. So if I come over here to the add, I can go to from existing items. And I can do a search inside of Vault to get the what I want. In this case, it's a service kit that I want to reuse. Already has an item number to it. I'll simply double click it, and now it gets added at the bottom of this bill of materials. Now, this item here, we can still make modifications to it, by the way, where we can come over here and tell it how many of it we need. Maybe we need 10 of these service kits to go with it, for example. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 2, whatever it is. I can come in here and make that change so that it gets accounted for when we go ahead and export this out. So we'll add that by simply hitting save here. That's one way to add items. If I click on this pull down, notice there is from new item. So we can create the item on the spot as well if we wanted to. What I'm going to do right now, though, is I'm going to create it slightly differently. I'm going to add from existing, and I want to show you how you can do it even if you didn't have to add it to an assembly you're working on right now. Maybe you just need to add something right now. I'm in my item master. Again, you can go there by clicking on item master in the bottom left-hand corner. If I go to the top left-hand corner, there's create a new item. It'll then ask you what category do you want to put it in. In case you're not aware, Vault Professional gives you the ability to create different categories. So you can have different life cycle states, different properties that you expect for each component. So I'm going to OK this category here. And I'm just going to fill in some quick information here. What we're adding right now is paint that we might want to add to this. So I just kind of created some shortcuts for myself, and there we go. And what unit we want, we'll go with gallon. All right, so I have the basics of this item that I want to have right now, and I'll just simply hit save. By the way, as I'm doing this, keep in mind, remember I said earlier, you can create an item right now and then add the file later. Notice there's a drag and drop files here. So we can actually add the CAD file later if we needed to. There's been some instances as well with some customers where they already have the item in ERP. You can actually mass import those items in here as well. So keep that in mind as well. All right, we'll simply go back to this assembly and we'll open it up under bill of materials. We'll just go into edit mode here really quick. And now we can add from existing item. And we'll just call this one paint. Sure enough, there it is. Notice the item numbering scheme it took on since it didn't map it from, there was no CAD file to grab it from, right? So we'll add this here. And save it. All right, now that we've gone through that, we took a look at how we can add existing items, create new items. One other thing I want to mention really quick is I don't know how many of you are used to using the create inside of Inventor. So inside of Inventor, when I'm in an assembly, we have a create option here. Some of you might already be used to this where you simply create a part in the context of the assembly, but there's also one called here a virtual component. What this does is it creates the placeholder for the part. Again, it could be grease paint, for example, and it won't create in a model. It won't create an IPT. It's just a placeholder. It'll show up on your parts list, and it'll also pick it up inside of Vault Professional. So it'll say, hey, here's a new item as well, and you can go ahead and create an item out of that. The reason I bring that up is, hey, it doesn't matter if the chicken or the egg comes first. You can do it in Inventor, or you can do it in Vault Professional as well. Either one is completely fine. All right, let's move forward here to just a few more things. And that's now that we have all this information inside of Vault, how can we leverage it? What's the ultimate thing we want to do? Well, first of all, I'm going to exit edit mode. We can right-click this now and export this bill of materials. When we export it, we can choose exactly which ones. Again, in case you had long lead items and you had a small batch of files that you wanted to release first, you could definitely do that. I'll go ahead and hit next here, and you'll see that I can create a CSV here. So we'll just give this a quick name on my C drive. And item bomb is all I call it. And then I can choose which properties I want to use. So I can just simply click and drag all the different ones that I want to use over here on the right-hand side. I can drag them from left to right or right to left to remove them. And I can tell it what name it's going to take on in the ERP program, wherever I'm going to import it to. I can also change the order of these. So if I wanted item quantity first, so that it'll make things easier for you. When you import it in, it'll be formatted the way you need to. You can move these around just by dragging them up and down as well. We can also save this mapping, by the way, so we don't have any inconsistencies, and we can make sure that everybody on our team has the exact same method they're using to import this stuff. When we hit export, it'll go ahead and create that for us and give us a summary before we hit finish to make sure everything looks correct. And that's how you can export the bill of materials. Let's go ahead and show you what that looks like too. Let's see, I put that on my C drive. So it's an Excel file, CSV, as I said, is your option there. And here's the example we have. I'll just simply select all the columns here so we can quickly make this a little bit bigger. And sure enough, all the information we had earlier shows up right here. All right, one last thing I want to go over, and that was, if you remember, I was talking about doing a BOM compare. So what I'll do right now is I have another file that I have to work with that I did a copy design. This is probably one of the best examples here to show it with. So I can go to this, the item for this. I'll go ahead and open it up. And under bill of materials, I can hit compare. Now, if I hit compare right now, I'm choosing what revision I want to compare it to. What's the latest revision of it? But in cases where I want to compare it to another assembly, I can do a find here, a search, and find that other assembly. In this case, it's a copy design assembly that I have. So when I do that, it's going to compare 932.42 with new 932.42. I'll hit compare, goes through all the items and takes a look at it. And you'll notice that I can hover over them and it tells me where it exists and where it doesn't. So it's telling me, I'll hover one more time, the row exists in revision A, version 1 of the item new, but not in revision A of the 932, right? The blue here shows you what things were added to this one versus the other one, right? So it always depends on which one you open up first. So remember that part as well. According to that, it shows you what was added here and what was taken out here versus the other one. So depending on what information you want, you're going to want to open that one first. Again, don't forget, this is one way to compare two different assemblies. But if you want to compare different versions or different revisions, I mean, within the same assembly, you go to the second pull down here. All right, so that's basically what I had here to show you today. I wanted to do an overview of items inside of Vault Professional, some of the capabilities inside of there, how we can create something from scratch, how we can utilize the ones that are already in there, compare the bill of materials, and most of all of this is coming from the assembly itself. So that our end goal is so we can export this out, get these items purchased, and we're now empowering not just yourselves, but other people in the organization to be able to check, take a look at this, edit it, export it, and be able to use it downstream so that we can get this to manufacturing correctly.
First question, in regards to the bill of materials export, is there a way to combine multiple columns or map them to completely different properties, or maybe combine some properties together, things like quantity, units, so on and so forth?
Somewhat. So not necessarily combine them. You have to do that before you map them inside of Vault, but you can map to custom properties. So you would have to create in your template probably a custom property as well as a new property inside of Vault that it can then pull that information from. So some people have used like iLogic, for example, to, if you will, kind of put an equation together of what that property should have inside of it. And then Vault just simply picks that information up and runs with it. And then therefore you can export that too.
Yep. So as long as you set it up beforehand, you can do it. If you haven't set it up beforehand, then maybe you need to go back, edit those templates. There's also ways to automate the whole process. So, Jorge, do you want to go over the automation of this process, how that works and what you can possibly do with it?
Yeah, good point. So Vault Professional has an open API to it. So we have a few different methods to do that. I apologize, I should have brought up some slides on that, but basically there's one where there could be a watch folder where there's a middleware that will pick up that this BOM has been exported upon a release. So that automatically exports that when you hit the release, basically. And then the ERP system just simply picks it up. That's a quick way to do it. Of course, that means that nobody's checking it, right? It's just taking it in, and you'll have to rely on the information going in is correct. The other method is there could be a way to be able to have like a gatekeeper, basically, and have an interface where you can have it take a look at and compare what's in ERP and what's inside of Vault Professional, and then be able to push that information one way or the other. So, and there's even some flexibility within those two as well. They both will require middleware and some configuration. As you know, I'm sure everybody here has a different ERP. There might be some of you with the same ones, but there's a lot of different systems out there. But the answer is yes, we can integrate with various ERP systems.
Yep, and once you do that, like Jorge said, you hit the release button, and then boom, the bill of material starts heading over because you set it up that way. What about parts that sit in multiple assemblies? Things that are, for example, common parts. How do those work with bill of material or with items, Jorge? Can you add one file to multiple items? Does it lock that file to be used in other assemblies? What's the best practice for that?
Yeah, you can use it in multiple assemblies. The only thing you'll want to be careful with is, if you start to edit it, you have to realize that really you're going to affect multiple ones. So it really comes down to the engineers and the people responsible um, I can't find a better word other than to deal with it, right? To go back to those assemblies retroactively and make sure that if you are making a change that that you mean to affect that, right? That's really what it comes down to. Kind of being conscious of those changes that you need to make and then making the decision, well, shoot, if I change this, it affects that other one. Maybe I should just make a new one.
Exactly, or do it like, yeah, that's where copy design comes into play, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
really to roll with it that way. All right. Can you control items with ECOs in Vault?
Yeah. What you can do with the change orders, basically what you control is if it's work in progress or released. So they can work hand in hand. There is again some configuration that works with that. But the answer is yes, you can work with change orders and items. For those of you that might be aware already in using life cycles with files, you can do the same thing with items too.
Yep. And then that brings up another good question when we're talking about file life cycles, Jorge. I know the answer to this, but a lot of people do not. What is our suggestion in regards to having file-based life cycles, item-based life cycles, or both?
Sure. So it's recommended to choose one or the other. Although you can have a hybrid and have both, we've been in instances with customers where that wasn't the best scenario. It's better to choose one or the other. And how do you know which one to choose is really the biggest question I think we get. And really, you're going to choose item-based life cycles if you're going to be exporting to ERP from Vault. If you know for a fact you are not going to be using it that method, and you're really just going to control the work in progress stuff inside of Vault, then you'll be fine with file-based life cycles. You can also technically start with file-based life cycles and change to items later. There will be some training involved, some configuration, and some change of habits, of course. But you can do it that way. I don't normally recommend to have both at the same time.
Yeah, so the short answer is if you foresee yourself doing some of this export, go with items and don't use both. So Vault wants to automatically create items for components in AutoCAD Mechanical and Electrical. If those are not wanted, is there a good way to bypass the automatic creation of items?
Yeah, I want to understand what you mean by automatically. In other words, is it truly just creating the item without you doing anything at all? Because usually items don't get created until you right click and hit assign. Once you hit assign, then yes, it will definitely do it. I don't know if you have something else there program that's doing that. And also for everybody's knowledge, since we're answering this question, AutoCAD Mechanical does have a bill of materials tool in there and it'll actually pick it up, as well as electrical. When you're doing it with electrical, you actually want to do the bill of materials not per drawing, but for the electrical project itself. Because the project is what holds all the information of all the parts that are a part of that entire project. So David, maybe we can kind of take that offline and see why that's happening automatically. That's pretty rare. I haven't seen that before.
But definitely, it's been a great session. Thanks again, Jorge, for being with us this week.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Definitely thank you all for being a part of our AVA community. It is the viewership that keeps us going every week. So with that, we'll go ahead and see you all next Thursday at 10 a.m. Like every week. So thanks, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you then next week. Bye-bye.